In the heart of Dubai, where gold towers scrape the heavens and the rich live as if time itself bends to their will, one man stood above them all, Khalid al-Rashid, the trillionaire whose name was whispered across continents. To the world, he was power incarnate, ruthless in business, untouchable in status, and a legend in silence. But on a quiet night, as a storm swept through his marble estate, Khalid discovered something that would strip him of every illusion he'd ever built. A woman, trembling in the dark, living secretly in the basement of his own mansion. She was young, barefoot, her dark skin covered in dust and her eyes wide with fear. Her name was Amara, an African woman who had fled war and hunger, seeking safety, only to end up forgotten beneath the floor of unimaginable wealth. When their eyes met, Khalid felt something inside him shift, something primal, human, and buried beneath decades of pride. What would a man who owned everything do when confronted by someone who had nothing? What would a heart wrapped in steel do when faced with innocence that didn't ask, didn't beg, only existed? Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications, because what happens next will redefine what it means to be powerful and what it means to be human. The rain struck the glass walls of Khalid al-Rashid's mansion like a symphony of silver needles. Outside, the desert wind howled across the dunes, carrying the kind of storm that rarely visited Dubai. Inside, everything gleamed, marble floors polished to perfection, chandeliers heavy with crystal, and silence that felt almost sacred. Khalid sat alone in his office on the upper floor, his fingers resting on a tumbler of whiskey he hadn't touched. He was a man who had conquered industries, reshaped cities, and turned oil into empires. Yet, at that moment, he felt nothing. Wealth had insulated him from pain, but it had also starved him of meaning. Below, the power flickered. A soft hum echoed through the walls, faint, rhythmic, like footsteps. Khalid frowned. He lived alone now. The staff had left hours earlier. Standing, he took the small flashlight from his desk and followed the sound. The corridor stretched into shadows as he descended the grand staircase. The house groaned with the weight of the storm, yet beneath it was something else, movement, slow and careful. He walked past the kitchen, past the glass doors leading to the courtyard, until he reached the old storage wing. A faint draft seeped through a half-open metal door. He hesitated. No one had entered that section in years. As he stepped inside, the flashlight beam cut through the dust. Shelves of forgotten antiques lined the walls, relics of his father's collection. But near the far corner, the light caught something unexpected, a faint shimmer of fabric, a human silhouette pressed against the wall. "Who's there?" Khalid's voice was deep, commanding. The figure froze. Then, slowly, a voice answered, soft, trembling. "Please, don't call the police." Khalid's breath hitched. He moved closer, and the beam revealed her fully, a young woman no older than 25, crouched beside a stack of wooden crates. Her clothes were torn, her face streaked with dust and tears. Her dark curls clung to her cheeks, and her bare feet trembled against the cold floor. For a long moment, neither spoke. "What are you doing in my house?" he finally asked. Her lips quivered as she tried to speak. "I didn't mean to. I had nowhere else to go. Please, I'll leave just." He raised a hand, cutting her off. "How long have you been here?" She hesitated, eyes darting toward the ground. "A few weeks. Maybe a month." Khalid's jaw tightened. "You've been living in my basement?" Her shoulders shook as she nodded. "There was a door. It was open. I thought no one lived here. I was hungry. I didn't steal anything, I swear." Khalid studied her, the dirt under her fingernails, the thinness of her frame, the way her eyes refused to meet his. She didn't look like a thief. She looked like someone who had survived too much. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. "Amara," she whispered. "Where are you from, Amara?" "South Sudan." Khalid exhaled. "You came here how?" "I came with others. A man promised jobs in Dubai. We were supposed to work cleaning houses. But it wasn't true." Her voice cracked. "He took our papers, our money. Some of us ran. I ran." He felt something heavy stir in his chest, a mixture of anger and disbelief. He had read about human trafficking, seen the reports, even donated to charities addressing it. But never had it felt this close, this real. And you chose this house, he said, more to himself than to her. Her lips curved into a faint, nervous smile. It was big, empty. I thought maybe God led me here. The words hit him harder than he expected. He'd stopped believing in God a long time ago. He knelt slightly, lowering his voice. Why didn't you ask for help? I did, she said softly. People look away. They see my skin, they hear my accent, and they close the door. Khalid's throat tightened. He knew that world, one divided by walls of class and cruelty. He had built those walls himself. He extended a hand toward her, but she flinched. He froze. I'm not going to hurt you, he said. Her wide eyes searched his face for truth. Men always say that. The words pierced him. I'm not like them, he said finally. You're safe here. Amara hesitated, then nodded faintly. Khalid offered her his hand again, and this time she took it, trembling, cold, light as paper. When she stood, he realized how small she was. Her frame seemed fragile against the vastness of the room. She looked like a ghost misplaced among the living. Come upstairs, he said gently. You need food. Warmth. Her eyes widened in disbelief. You'd let me stay? Just for tonight, he replied, though his tone lacked conviction. Minutes later, they sat at the long dining table under the golden chandelier. The contrast between them was almost surreal, the richest man in Dubai and the woman who had been sleeping beneath his feet. Khalid poured her a glass of water. She drank it so fast he had to refill it twice. When food arrived, leftovers he reheated himself. She ate with silent gratitude, her eyes glistening. Thank you, she murmured. No one's been kind to me in a long time. He leaned back, watching her carefully. Kindness doesn't cost much. She looked up, meeting his gaze. That's easy to say when you have everything. For the first time in years, Khalid didn't know how to respond. He set down his fork and studied her, not just as a stranger, but as a mirror reflecting the emptiness he'd refused to see. Outside, the rain eased. The mansion seemed quieter now, as if listening. Amara lowered her head. I'll leave tomorrow. I promise. Khalid's voice was soft. We'll see about that. When she looked up, she found him already watching her, not with suspicion, but with something deeper. Something human. And for the first time that night, the storm truly stopped.
The morning sun crept into the mansion like a quiet intruder, sliding through the glass walls and resting on the cold marble floor. The storm was gone, but its echo remained, in the stillness, in the faint scent of rain, and in Khalid's mind. He hadn't slept. His thoughts were haunted by the image of the woman he found hiding beneath his own empire. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her, fragile, trembling, yet somehow proud even in her fear. He walked down the stairs slowly, the sound of his footsteps echoing through the vast hall. The mansion, which once felt like a symbol of control and success, now felt hollow. He'd lived surrounded by staff, advisors, and luxury, but last night, for the first time in years, someone had spoken to him without fear. In the kitchen, he stopped short. There she was, Amara, sitting by the counter, her knees pulled close to her chest. She had borrowed one of his shirts, which hung loosely over her shoulders, and her hair was still damp from the shower. The early light caught the curve of her cheek, the softness of her expression. She looked peaceful, but her eyes carried the fatigue of someone who had lived 1,000 nights without rest. Khalid cleared his throat gently so as not to startle her. She looked up quickly, almost dropping the piece of bread in her hand. You didn't have to wake so early, he said, his voice calm. I'm sorry, she murmured, standing up instinctively. I didn't want to cause trouble. You didn't, he replied. Sit. Amara hesitated before slowly returning to her seat. The smell of fresh bread and tea filled the air. Khalid walked to the counter, poured himself a cup, and leaned against the marble. You can stay here for a few days, he said without looking at her, until we figure out what to do next. Her head lifted sharply. Stay? You mean here? Yes. He sipped his tea. You can't live underground, Amara. You need rest, food, safety. Her fingers tightened around the cup she was holding. I'm not used to people helping me without wanting something back. He looked up, meeting her eyes. I'm not like those men. For a moment, silence hung between them, heavy but not uncomfortable. The distant hum of the city outside was the only sound. Amara finally spoke. "You asked last night why I didn't ask for help. It's because people look at me and see a problem, not a person. But last night you saw me." Khalid set his cup down slowly. Her words pierced through him, hitting places he had long buried. "You were in my house," he said softly. "How could I not see you?" She smiled faintly. "You'd be surprised how easy it is to disappear in the world of rich men." Khalid didn't respond. His empire had been built on attention to detail, on control, on knowing everything. Yet somehow a young woman had lived beneath his feet for weeks, invisible. That truth humbled him more than he cared to admit. He stepped closer. "You're not invisible anymore." Amara looked down at her plate, her lips trembling slightly. "Then what am I, Mr. Al-Rashid?" Khalid studied her for a long time. "Someone who deserves better than this world gave you." For the first time since they met, she didn't look afraid. Her eyes softened, and the faintest hint of trust crossed her face. The rest of the morning passed in quiet rhythm. Khalid had his assistant cancel his meetings, telling no one why. He couldn't explain it, not to himself, not to anyone. But something about Amara made everything else seem meaningless. He found himself watching her as she explored the house, moving slowly like someone afraid to touch anything too beautiful. She paused by the window overlooking the garden, her fingers brushing the glass. "I used to dream of houses like this," she said quietly. "When I was little, I told my brother I'd live in one someday." He laughed. "Do you miss him?" Khalid asked. Amara nodded. "He didn't survive the war." The words were simple, but they carried a weight that made Khalid's chest tighten. He wanted to say something, anything, but nothing felt adequate. So instead he stepped closer and said softly, "You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to." She turned to face him. "No one's ever said that to me before." He didn't know how to answer. For years people had only ever talked to him, never with him. But here, in his own home, this woman he barely knew was unraveling him with honesty. The afternoon sun deepened, painting the room in amber light. Amara sat on the couch and Khalid joined her, a strange sight, a man worth trillions and a woman who owned nothing, sitting side by side in silence that spoke volumes. Finally she broke it. "Why are you helping me?" He turned to her. "Because I can." "That's not an answer," she said softly. "You've helped charities before." "This is different." Khalid hesitated, then sighed. "Maybe I've spent too long building things that don't matter." "Maybe last night reminded me what does." Her eyes searched his face, unsure whether to believe him. "You talk like someone who's lost something." He looked out the window, voice low. "I have. What was it?" He glanced back at her, and for a second, the man behind the $1 trillion name vanished. "My piece." Amara didn't reply, but something changed in her expression. Empathy, perhaps, or recognition. She leaned slightly forward, her tone gentle. "Maybe you'll find it again." Khalid stared at her, unsure what to say. The woman who had once hidden in his basement now spoke to him like someone who had seen through his soul. And in that moment, he realized something he hadn't felt in years. Connection. As the sky darkened once more, Khalid stood. "You should rest. Tomorrow we'll talk about what comes next." She nodded quietly. "Thank you. For everything." He turned to leave, but her voice stopped him at the doorway. "Khalid?" He looked back. She smiled faintly. "Maybe God really did lead me here." He said nothing. But his chest ached with an emotion he couldn't name, and for the first time in his life, Khalid al-Rashid, the trillionaire who thought he had everything, wasn't sure who was saving whom. The next morning was unusually quiet in the al-Rashid mansion. The early light glowed through the tall windows, filtering across white marble like soft gold. Khalid stood by the balcony of his bedroom, staring out over the city skyline that once gave him pride. Skyscrapers glittered like blades of glass in the sun, a kingdom he had built, but now it all felt strangely hollow. He didn't know why he kept thinking about the woman sleeping downstairs. Something about her had disrupted the rhythm of his life. He was a man who lived by control, routine, and logic, and yet her presence had thrown all of that into chaos. He turned from the view and straightened his suit. Meetings awaited, investors expected him. But as he reached the door, he hesitated. He found himself walking not toward the garage, but back down the stairs, toward the guest room where Amara was staying. The door was slightly open. He knocked lightly, "Come in," came her soft voice. He entered. The room looked different now, alive. Morning light flooded in through the curtains, falling on Amara as she sat by the window, her dark curls illuminated like threads of bronze. She was wearing one of the simple dresses one of the maids had left for her. Her bare feet brushed the edge of the rug as she looked up at him. "Good morning," she said with a small smile. He nodded, trying to sound casual. "You slept well?" "Better than I have in years," she said. "I kept thinking I'd wake up and this would all be a dream. It's not," he replied. "You're safe here." Her smile faded slightly. "Safe, but for how long?" He frowned. "What do you mean?" "You said I could stay for a few days," she reminded him. "And I'm grateful. But I can't stay forever, Khalid. I don't belong in a place like this." Her words stung in a way he didn't expect. "You don't belong in a basement either." "I know," she said quietly. "But the world doesn't have many places for people like me." Khalid leaned against the doorframe, studying her. "Then maybe it's time to make one." Amara's eyes met his, uncertain, searching. "You make it sound simple." "For me, it is," he said, a hint of confidence returning to his tone. "I've built cities. Surely I can build a life for one woman." She laughed softly, shaking her head. "You speak like someone who thinks money can fix everything." He hesitated. "Can it?" Her gaze hardened slightly. "No, if it could, I wouldn't be who I am." That answer hit him deeper than he wanted to admit. Khalid had spent decades solving every problem with wealth, with influence. Yet, standing before Amara, he realized there were wounds money could never touch. "Then tell me what does fix it," he said quietly. Amara turned toward the window again. "Being seen, being loved without fear, being told you matter, even when you have nothing." Khalid felt his throat tighten. For a man who had spent years surrounded by people chasing his approval, he suddenly realized how rarely he'd given his own. Before he could speak again, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He sighed, pulling it out. The name flashing on the screen made him grimace. Farid, his personal assistant. He answered. "What is it?" "Sir, there's an urgent issue with the board. They're requesting your presence at the main office. The media is already reporting on a merger delay." Khalid cut him off. "Handle it. I'll be there later." "But sir," he hung up. Amara tilted her head. "You should go. You have responsibilities." Khalid looked at her, then shook his head. "Some things are more important." "You mean your company?" "No," he said. "I mean this moment." Her lips parted slightly. "You don't even know me, Khalid." "Then tell me who you are," he said simply. Amara looked down, fidgeting with the edge of her sleeve. "I was born in Malakal in South Sudan. My father died in the war when I was 10. My mother sold everything to get us to Uganda. I worked in markets, cleaned houses, and dreamed of a life that didn't hurt so much." Her voice trembled. "When a man came offering work in Dubai, I thought God had finally answered me. But I was wrong. He sold us to families, to men who treated us like ghosts. I escaped, but others didn't." The silence that followed was heavy. Khalid felt something twist inside him. Anger, sorrow, shame. He stepped closer. "No one should live like that." "People do," she whispered. "Every day." He wanted to say something to ease the pain in her voice, but he knew words would fail. So instead, he reached into his pocket, pulled out a small golden pendant, a relic he carried since his mother's death, and placed it on the table beside her. "What's this?" she asked. "My mother's," he said softly. "She wore it when she fled from war, too. It reminded her that survival isn't weakness. It's strength." Amara stared at the pendant, then at him. "Why are you giving this to me?" "Because I think she'd want you to have it." Her eyes shimmered with tears she tried to hide. "I can't accept this. You already did," he said gently. For a moment, they just stood there, two souls from opposite worlds bound by something deeper than circumstance. Then Amara whispered, "You're not what I expected." He smiled faintly. "Neither are you." That afternoon, Khalid received a call that would shake the fragile calm. "Sir," his assistant said nervously, "the press found out about the woman. They're asking questions. Someone saw her entering your property." Khalid froze. "What? It's spreading fast." "They're saying you're hiding someone, possibly illegal." He clenched his jaw. "Handle it." "No one says a word about her." Amara had stepped into the doorway, her face pale. "They know?" He turned to her. "I'll fix it. You can't fix this," she cried. "They'll deport me." "They'll—" He stepped forward, his voice firm but calm. No one will touch you, Amara. Not while I'm here. Tears welled in her eyes. Why are you doing this? You don't owe me anything. He paused, meeting her gaze. Maybe not, but for the first time in years, I want to owe someone something real. She looked at him, trembling, confused, afraid, and then whispered, You're going to lose everything for helping me. Khalid's eyes softened. Then maybe I'll finally know what everything is worth. The wind outside howled again, sweeping across the desert. But this time Khalid didn't flinch. For the first time, he wasn't the man hiding behind walls of gold. He was something far rarer, human. The next few days felt like a storm Khalid could not control. News outlets whispered rumors about the mysterious woman seen entering the Al-Rashid estate. Photos circulated online, blurry images of Amara walking behind him near his car. The captions were cruel, the speculation worse. Who is she? A mistress? A scandal? A refugee hidden by a billionaire? Khalid's board was furious. His company's stocks dipped slightly. Not enough to ruin him, but enough to sting his pride. For a man used to commanding silence and respect, the sudden invasion into his private life felt like a violation. He had faced oil crises, political threats, even betrayal within his empire, but none of that compared to this unfamiliar chaos in his heart. He wasn't just trying to protect his name, he was trying to protect her. That night he returned home late. The mansion was dim except for the soft glow of the lights in the corridor leading to the guest room. He paused outside her door, hearing faint movement inside. He knocked softly. Amara? The door opened a crack. She stood there in one of his shirts again, her eyes wide, her expression wary. They're saying things about you, she whispered. About us, I know, he said quietly. I should leave. You're not leaving, Khalid, she said, her voice trembling. You don't understand. People like me. When the government finds out, they won't find out, he interrupted. I have lawyers, contacts. I can protect you. Her eyes filled with tears, but she shook her head. You can't protect me from the truth. What truth? He asked softly. That I don't belong here, she said, her voice cracking. You're a man everyone fears. A man who has everything. And I'm someone who had to sleep under the ground to survive. He stepped closer, his gaze steady. You survived. That makes you stronger than any of them. She looked up at him, her lips parting slightly. Why are you doing this? He hesitated, his chest tightening. Because you remind me what it means to feel alive. Her breath caught. And for a long moment, they simply stood there, two souls on opposite ends of the world, bound by something neither could name. Then she whispered, You shouldn't say things like that. Why not? Because I might believe you, she said softly, her eyes glistening. Khalid didn't answer. Instead, he reached out gently and brushed a tear from her cheek. His touch was light, almost reverent, as though she might vanish if he held her too tightly. She closed her eyes, a silent tear slipping down her face. When she opened them again, he stepped back, breaking the fragile spell between them. Get some sleep, he murmured. Tomorrow I'll take care of this mess. Amara nodded weakly, but when he turned to leave, her voice stopped him. Khalid? He looked back. What if I bring you more trouble than peace? He smiled faintly. Then maybe peace was overrated. The next day, Khalid faced his board. A long mahogany table separated him from 12 of the most powerful men in the Middle East. Men who had profited from his leadership but never dared to question it. Until now, Mr. Al-Rashid, began Omar, his chief financial officer, this situation is concerning. The press is spreading stories that could harm our public image. Investors are nervous. Khalid leaned back in his chair. Let them be nervous. Another board member, older and bolder, frowned. Are you admitting this woman is living in your home? Khalid met his gaze without flinching. Yes, murmurs filled the room. Do you understand how this looks? Yes, he said calmly. It looks like compassion. Something this company could use more of. This is not charity, Khalid, Omar snapped. You're risking your legacy over a woman you barely know. For the first time, Khalid's tone sharpened. Maybe my legacy needs to be rewritten. The room fell silent. He stood slowly, adjusting his cufflinks. If any of you think I'm stepping down or abandoning this company, you're mistaken. But I'll tell you one thing. I won't apologize for helping someone who needed me. He turned and left the boardroom, leaving behind a silence too thick for any of them to break. When Khalid returned home that evening, He found Amara in the garden, kneeling beside the small fountain, her hands submerged in the water. She looked peaceful, her reflection rippling softly across the surface. He walked up quietly, stopping beside her. "You've been outside all day," she smiled faintly. "I wanted to feel the sun again." He looked down at her hands, small, delicate, scarred. "You're not afraid anymore of the dark?" she asked. He nodded. She shook her head. "Not since I met you." Khalid crouched beside her, the air thick between them. "The board doesn't want you here," he said. "I figured," she murmured. "Men like that don't like when you make them feel." He chuckled softly. "You're not afraid of speaking your mind." "I've been silenced too long," she said, meeting his gaze. He studied her face, the quiet strength in her eyes, the warmth in her voice. "Do you trust me, Amara?" She hesitated, then whispered, "I want to." He reached into his jacket pocket and handed her a small envelope. She opened it slowly. Inside was a passport and a legal document. Her hands trembled. "You did this for me?" she asked, her voice breaking. "It's temporary," he said, "until we can find something better." Tears filled her eyes as she looked at the passport, her new name, her new identity. "Khalid, this could get you arrested," he smiled faintly. "I've been imprisoned by money all my life." "Maybe it's time I risk something for a person instead of a number." Amara pressed a hand to her mouth, trying not to cry. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll stay," he said softly. She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "I'll stay." The wind carried the scent of jasmine through the garden. The sun dipped low, painting the horizon in amber and gold. Khalid felt something stir deep within him, a peace he hadn't known he was searching for. But even as they stood together, he couldn't ignore the shadow creeping at the edge of his mind. Far away, a reporter was watching. A camera lens focused on them through the tall gates. The next headline would change everything. The Trillionaire and the Refugee, an unlikely love story or a dangerous secret. The morning it happened, Khalid woke to the sound of his phone vibrating relentlessly on the nightstand. He reached for it with a frown, still half asleep. His notifications were exploding. Hundreds of messages, missed calls, emails. Something was wrong. He sat up, rubbed his eyes, and opened the first message from his assistant. It was a link to a news article. The headline made his stomach drop. Trillionaire Khalid al-Rashid hiding illegal African woman in his mansion. Beneath the headline was a photo, the one that had been taken through the garden fence. Amara was kneeling by the fountain, her reflection shimmering in the water. He was beside her, crouched down, looking at her with a softness that needed no words. It was intimate, real. The article was merciless. It speculated that he was harboring a foreign woman under questionable circumstances. Social media was worse, comments filled with hate, disbelief, and cruelty. Some accused him of exploiting her. Others claimed she had manipulated him. By the time he reached the dining room, Amara was already there, sitting at the table with a newspaper in her trembling hands. Her face was pale, her eyes red. "They know," she said softly. "Everyone knows." He crossed the room quickly and sat across from her. "I'll fix it." "You can't fix this," she whispered. "It's everywhere. I can make it go away." "I'll sue the papers, call my lawyers." She cut him off sharply. "And what about me? Do I just hide again? In another place? Another lie?" Her words hit him like a blade. He leaned forward, his voice low. "You don't have to hide. Not anymore. You don't understand," she cried. "They'll hunt me. The government, the people who trafficked me, everyone." "I shouldn't have stayed. I should have left when I had the chance." Khalid stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the marble. "And go where? Back to fear? To nothing?" "No, Amara, not again." She looked up at him, shaking her head. "You don't owe me this, Khalid. You don't have to lose everything for me." He stepped closer, his tone breaking. "Maybe losing everything is the only way to find something real." Amara covered her face with her hands. "You don't know what you're saying." He knelt beside her, taking her trembling hands away from her face. "I know exactly what I'm saying. I've spent my life surrounded by people who wanted me for my money. But you don't want anything from me, and that's why I can't let them destroy you." Her lips parted as tears streamed down her cheeks. "Then they'll destroy you instead." He smiled faintly. "Then I'll fight them." By afternoon, Khalid's legal team had gathered in his office. His longtime attorney, Rahim, paced the floor while others whispered among themselves. "Sir," Rahim began, "the situation is escalating. The government wants a statement. The immigration office is investigating. Then we cooperate," Khalid said firmly. "With all due respect," Rahim said, lowering his voice, "cooperation could mean her deportation." "And possibly charges against you." Khalid's jaw clenched. "She's not leaving this country." "Then you need to make them believe this isn't a crime," Rahim replied. "You need to make them believe it's love." The room went silent. Khalid looked up, eyes narrowing. "What are you suggesting?" "Make it official," Rahim said. "Marry her." The idea struck like lightning. Khalid froze, his heart pounding in disbelief. "Marry her?" he repeated slowly. "It would protect her legally," Rahim explained, "and silence most of the media. It's drastic, but it's the only path left that gives you control." Khalid looked out the window, his reflection fractured in the glass. He could see her face in his mind, fragile, kind, undeserving of the chaos he had brought to her life. Could he really do it? Could he marry her just to save her? That night he found Amara standing by the pool. The moon reflected on the water like silver glass. She wore one of the simple dresses from before, her hair loose around her shoulders. She turned when she heard him. "You shouldn't be out here," he said quietly. "Neither should you," she replied, a faint smile tugging at her lips. He took a deep breath. "I have an idea. A way to keep you safe." Her expression shifted. "What kind of idea?" He hesitated, then said it plainly. "Marriage." Her eyes widened. "What?" "If we marry, they can't deport you. They can't accuse me of hiding you illegally. Everything becomes legitimate." Amara stared at him in disbelief. "You're not serious." "I am," he said, stepping closer. She laughed, a broken, trembling sound. "You think marriage can fix this? You think signing a paper will make the world forget?" "It's not about the world," he said. "It's about you." She shook her head. "You can't just marry someone out of pity." "It's not pity," he said, his voice rising. "It's choice." "My choice." Amara took a step back, tears forming in her eyes. "And what happens when the cameras go away? When the scandal fades? You'll move on, and I'll be the woman they whispered about forever." He reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "You think I haven't been used before, Khalid? You think I haven't been owned, traded, rescued only to be abandoned again? I won't let it happen one more time." He looked at her, truly looked, and for the first time realized how deep her scars went. Not the visible ones, but the ones time had carved into her soul. He took a slow step forward. "Then tell me what to do, Amara. Tell me how to make this right." She wiped her tears, her voice barely a whisper. "Let me go." His chest tightened. "I can't." "You have to." "No," he said firmly. "Not after everything." She turned away, staring out at the moonlit water. "You can save me, Khalid, but you can't fix me." He stood there in silence, the sound of the wind and the distant city filling the night. He wanted to argue, to make her stay, but deep inside he knew she was right. Finally, he spoke. "Then I'll make sure wherever you go, you'll never have to hide again." She turned back, eyes shining with tears. "Why do you care so much?" "Because," he said softly, "you remind me of the man I wanted to be before I became the man they fear." For a moment, neither of them moved. The air between them was electric, heavy with emotion and everything unsaid. Then Amara whispered, "And if I say yes?" He looked at her, his voice trembling. "Then I'll spend the rest of my life proving I meant it." The night seemed to pause. The wind stilled. The city lights flickered like distant stars, and for the first time she didn't run.